What was the worst punishment your parents ever gave you and why? My dad was smart. All his punishments were things he would have to do eventually. One time I went to a party at my friend's house without telling my parents. I was woken up at 6 a.m. to a breakfast I couldn't eat because I was hungover. Then I was sent outside to pick up sticks. My parents' backyard is surrounded with trees. There is a never-ending supply of sticks you can pick up. Not just big ones, any tiny twig in the grass was to be picked up. Walking around bending over to grab sticks for hours while hungover was a good enough punishment to keep me from sneaking to parties. My mom took my books away for a month. Worse than any spanking. What did I do? I was reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. At some point, some queen tries to seduce the hero, and the hero turns her down. My super conservative mom found that passage. Too much sex. No reading for me for a month. You would think 1, our hero turning down sex is a good example of chastity, and 2, you would be glad your teenager is reading anything. But no, sinful thoughts and all. I had to eat nutty candies. I was allergic. Edit. No need to freak out too much. They didn't know initially. Yes, they noticed the symptoms, but they didn't put 2 and 2 together. Initially, they gave me nutty candies because I actively hated them. Only later did they know that I had an allergy, and thankfully they stopped. I threw a pop bottle out the car window. My dad slammed the brakes and told me to get out of the car, pick it up, and walk home. He then just took off. Mind you, we were already in our very safe neighborhood, and I was 14, but man, did I feel like shit. To this day, I have never littered, and I go off on people who do. That is a pretty good punishment. You really learned your lesson, and that's what they should be about, right? The police took me to their office, and I had to sleep there through the night, cause I damaged stuff that was on private property. My mother neither angry nor sad. She just sat there with big disappointment in her eyes. My punishment from the police was to collect trash from a park. My mother's punishment was silent. She looked at me with this disappointment, and when I tried to talk to her, she gave me short answers, thanks Santa Claus. She eventually came back to her old behavior, but that was the worst punishment I've ever received. Good parenting. My mom made me feel like a disappointment for my whole childhood, so getting a look of disappointment, even deserved, would have done nothing but sting a little. I never really connected punishments with what I did was wrong, but rather would they treat me like shit no matter what, so I'll do what I want but try not to get caught next time. In your case, it sounds as if she is a loving mom who knew that you should have known better than that, so a look and not really talking to you for a few days had a real impact. Probably wasn't the worst punishment, but came at the worst time. So I was in high school, and I'd been talking to this girl for a while. Well, one day, I get a text from her saying, "Hey, you want to come over?" Smiley face. Well, the day before I got a ticket for speeding grounding me, and my parents decided to punish me by taking my car away. I got so sad when I had to reply, "Can't. I'm grounded." Sad face. Probably something with schoolwork. I was terrible at doing my homework. My dad made me collect everything in my room and put them in trash bags. I had to take all of the trash bags to the garage. So I had roughly 20 trash bags of my stuff. It took about 3 hours to collect it all. Then once a week, I got 1 trash bag of stuff back. If I got my grade to move up, then I could collect more. Obviously, he kept the good stuff last. PlayStation, cable box, computer were all given back if I did exceptionally well. After about 7 weeks, I was able to get all my stuff back, but only after basically moving my whole room and living in a barren room for a couple of weeks. When I was in 5th grade, age 10 to 11, I told my mom that I didn't have any homework. So she went off to her belly dance class, and I did my homework the second she left. Granted, it was only about 10 really easy math problems, but I wanted to prove that I didn't need to be told to do my homework. When she came back, I showed her how I had done my homework. She grounded me for a month for lying to her. Additionally, she disallowed me from watching TV on weekdays unless it was with her or my dad. I'm still grounded from TV as a junior in high school, 17. My father made me touch a burning hot piece of metal with my bare hands. It's definitely a strong deterrent, and I've had a healthy fear of hot metal, and him and being punished since then. I wasn't listening to him while using power tools, and he told me I could hurt myself. So, to make it clear, he made me hurt myself to show how painful it would be if I continued to be stupid around tools that could hurt me. I've also similarly learned you never walk away from fire, including kitchen appliances which could start fires, like the stove and the oven. It kind of worked, I guess. I was a nervous, jumpy kid who was scared of lots of things, including my father for years. It was my birthday, so my mom and her boyfriend at the time took me and my friends to go paintballing at an indoor arena. My mom's boyfriend was playing referee since we knew the owners. He got a paintball in the back of the head, assumed it was me that shot him on purpose, and pulled me out of the game and wouldn't let me back in for the rest of the games. I got to sit by myself while the rest of my family and friends enjoyed the shit out of it. Great friends. Great family. I got in trouble a lot when I was a kid. More often than not, I was grounded from TV or going outside, or they would take away my favorite toys. The worst was when they figured out I was completely okay with being grounded because it gave me time to read, so they took away my books for a couple weeks when I was 8 or so. But I still read, damn it. I used to sneak downstairs after everyone went to bed and grab a book off the bookcase in the living room. I finished Tommy Knockers, The Stand, AITA, and Gerard's Game before my parents caught on. When I was 3, I got a balloon. I don't remember where I got this balloon. It was some family outing. Anyway, I was very excited about this balloon. The time came to go home, so we all piled into the minivan, me in the car seat behind my dad, who was driving. Well, the balloon, being a balloon, kept bopping the back of my dad's seat and making balloon hitting the seat noises, as balloons hitting seats do. He got increasingly more infuriated that my 3-year-old self could not seem to comprehend how to control the balloon. So he yanked the balloon out of my tiny, innocent hands and put it out the window. And it floated away, higher and further and further, into oblivion. It was soul-crushing. At 16, I came home pissed drunk one night at like 4 a.m. Stumbled around the kitchen for a while finding food, and my dad wakes up, makes a glass of water, says hello, and goes back to bed. I'm thinking that I got away with it, and he was too sleepy to notice how far gone I was. No, he woke me up at 10 a.m. and made me mow the lawn in the middle of a Georgia August. By the time I was done, it was well over 90 degrees, and I had vomited off the side of the mower a dozen times. I also had a headache from the noise and dehydration that I hoped would just kill me. The whole time my dad watched from the deck under an umbrella with a beer in hand. I remember when I was done, I walked up the steps, and he grinned and offered me a beer. Sick bastard. When I was in the 7th grade, we had just moved to Virginia from South Carolina, aka some of the best schools in the US from some of the worst schools in the US, and I was struggling to get used to the more difficult curriculum. As a result, I got my first C on a report card that year. My parents were so upset that, as punishment, they locked me out of the house one day in January when it was freezing rain with nothing but a heavy rain jacket. I was tasked to shovel a pile of sand from the backyard and then smooth the sand out underneath the deck. Mind you, this was wet sand, and I was a small 12-year-old girl. I had to get it done before my family got home from dinner, the movies, and shopping. All because I got my first C on a report card. Edit. Forgot to mention that I developed severe gastroenteritis a few weeks later, probably directly correlated with this punishment. I would have to stand in the corner for hours on end, with my back straight and my hands behind my back. If I was caught moving at all, I would get screamed at and corrected to stand straight again. This was not my parents who did this, though they used a similar method. They would stick me in the corner for hitting, but were much less strict. For them, it was time out. If I wasn't standing straight, they didn't care. This wasn't really my fault, but I went on a cruise that stopped at Mexico. I had no desire to go to Mexico, as I was 15 and wanted to go on the ship's computer and talk to my boyfriend. Well, my uncle somehow left the ship under my name. I don't know how this happened, but signed back and using his name. We have different last names, so they didn't make the connection and thought I was still in Mexico. They had record of me leaving and not coming back. They aren't allowed to delay the cruise for a missing person, so they told my mom they had to leave within 2 hours. She was panicking and went back to her room to pack her bag and go find me in Mexico. She wasn't going to leave me behind, thank God for that. Luckily, right as she was preparing to get off, I walked up to the group and was like, "Hey guys, when's dinner?" Everyone screamed at me, and my cousins were crying, and then I cried because I didn't know what was going on, and then they all just hugged me. The cruise line apologized profusely for the insane fuck-up, and I was basically on a leash for the rest of the cruise. I went to an end of the school year party, got drunk for the first time, and ended up passing out. My dad, obviously, expected me home by curfew. I didn't show. I also didn't answer my cell phone. None of my friends answered their cell phones. I woke up at about 5:30 a.m. and realized what I had done. As I quietly skulked through the door after driving home, my dad appeared. He had been up all night, pissed and terrified. He grounded me for the entire summer, until the first day of senior year. So I was grounded from June, late September. I never complained because I deserved that shit. Was grounded for 3 years with TV, internet, and could not hang out with friends. I was forced to read a book a daily and write a 2-page summary on said books. It was hell. Reason for punishment. 5th grade me had zero clue what Playboy was and just assumed it was another site for games. Boy, was I wrong. In 4th grade, my mother would make my write report/summaries on books that I was reading. It was a punishment for being in after-school program to get homework done. Not me, but a close friend of mine. We took my mother's car when we were 16, she was out of town, and went on a road trip to Ohio from MN to see a friend of ours who moved there. While we were there, we got pulled over for speeding, and the officer called my friend's dad, who was driving at the time, and my friend's dad was so upset the cop didn't give us a ticket or anything. He literally said to my friend, "I think you're in enough trouble, I'm just going to rip up this ticket." I was just fine with that, as I knew my mom would probably have murdered me if the officer would have called her. Anyway, once we got back, my friend's parents took the door off his room, so they could always keep an eye on him. I thought this was the worst punishment possible and rather creative, to be honest with you. Needless to say, it was a long, quiet 12 hours home. Nothing ever physical, but the few times I did get in trouble, I was emotionally punished. Whenever I was caught in a lie or did something wrong, like getting my ears pierced illegally, my dad, whose approval I always vied for, would sit me down and tell me how disappointed he was in me and wondered where he went wrong as a father. Crushed me pretty bad. I still can't get over it. When I was 14, I was hanging out with my friend and his parents weren't home. We wanted one of our friends to come over, but he didn't have a ride, so we took his dad's car to pick him up. Keep in mind, none of us had our license/learners, so we were completely inexperienced drivers. Anyways, we picked our friend up, and on the way back, I was trying to cross the 4-lane intersection and slammed on the gas. It was raining, and we hit a telephone pole and totaled the car. I was so scared of getting in trouble that I immediately got out of the car and started running. The police were looking for me for a couple hours and finally found me at a park near my house. When the police told my mom, she was surprisingly only slightly mad. I ended up just getting grounded for 2 weeks, so it wasn't so bad. Hunted for my Christmas presents in advance. Found them, opened them, started playing with them. Dad found us. Made us personally, individually, smash them to pieces in turn with a hammer, then bury all the pieces in the back garden. 0 presents that Christmas. I must have been about 7 years old. I'm interested. Do people think the punishment fitted the crime? I think I was around age 6 or 7, but I had been crying for a very long time, just throwing a tantrum over something absolutely stupid. After a long while of my parents begging me to quit, and then finally getting just fed up with my behavior, they shoved a spoon of their homemade hot sauce in my mouth. Their hot sauce is pretty much made of 90% habanero peppers. Shut me up pretty quick. I also have a great spice tolerance now. I'll take it as a win. For doing bad in school, I was grounded from midterm of 1 semester to the end of the following semester. I wasn't allowed to watch TV, use a computer, leave the yard, or do pretty much anything. I'm pretty sure the point was to force me to study, but it should have been clear that I was over my head and overwhelmed by everything going on. Looking back on it, it was awful. Rather than help me in any way, my parents would just force me to sit there as I worked myself up into a complete mess. The complete abandonment and constant reminder of how terrible I was built upon everything else and left me a mess. Writing this just makes me sound like some whiny asshole with first world problems. But I'm the product of my makers. My mother did that. I played World of Warcraft 2 on the family computer all the time, and it was then forbidden by her. I sneaked to the computer a couple of times, and then one day found the shortcut deleted. After clicking on the .exe directly for a couple more days. One day, I found the entire program deleted. She got me good then. So after moving the program back from the trash, I got to play for a couple more days. But then one day, I found the entire computer password protected. She really got me good then. Only this was Windows 98, and instead of putting in your username and password to log in, you could just click cancel and use a guest account. She gave up. As long as it taught you a lesson, he did his job. Happened to me kinda sorta, but I decided to go searching for Christmas presents and found Zelda OOT. Opened it and played it and rewrapped thinking my mom wouldn't know. Oh, she knew. Christmas morning, she addressed it to my dad rather than me. I couldn't play it for a whole year. Never snooped for presents again. Killed Santa for me that year and the element of surprise. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.